Boy, how thrilled are we to have this week one of the great personalities in the history of golf, and we've got him right here to talk about everything the Travelers and gambling. Peter Jacobsen, welcome to Cash Out with the Coaches.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you? Great to be with you.
We're always great, and coming out the U.S. Open was amazing. Before we get into this week, we've got to get your take because you've been a part of the NBC family for so long, and they had one of the great U.S. Opens this past week with Jon Rahm in a very poetic way, losing at the Memorial, coming back and winning his first major. What was your take on everything that was Torrey Pines in the U.S. Open?
Well, first of all, I'm a West Coast guy, born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I played so many tournaments at Torrey Pines, at Pebble Beach. I love being on the West Coast. And I think Torrey Pines, we saw back in 2008 when Tiger won, what a great golf course that is. What a great facility. It was pretty much unknown to the country until that week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been 13 years since we were back. And when you look at that leaderboard with 6 holes to play, those were future Hall of Famers on that board. And to see the different directions they went, you saw Rory spinning out, you saw Louis Oosthuizen hanging in and then falling off, and Jon Rahm putting himself into some bad places, but then coming through with 2 great birdies on the last 2. I think Torrey Pines is really one of the great golf courses in the country. Again, I'm a West Coast guy. I'm probably biased. But that aside, what impressed me about Jon Rahm, there's never been a question about Jon Rahm with his golf game, with his swing. Travis, he's got an interesting looking backswing. He's short. He's kind of got a bowed left wrist. But, man, he's consistent from tee to green. His driving is never a question. He's long. He's straight. His iron play is pretty accurate, and his short game has always been magical. The question about Jon's game, in my opinion, has been his perspective on the course and his attitude.
Mm-hmm.
When he first came out, he was probably what would be termed as a hothead. He would let bad breaks get in the way of good play. But I think we saw him mature right in front of our eyes last week at Torrey Pines. In fact, while I was doing the telecast, but watching at the same time as a golf fan, I was so impressed by how he handled himself. It's real easy to smile when you hit a great shot. You're up there with a little putt for birdie, and it's easy, and the world's good, and you're blowing kisses and kissing babies. But when you're behind the 8 ball and you've got a really tough bunker shot, or you've hit it to where you know you're going to make bogey or worse, I was just so impressed with the calm that we saw Jon Rahm exhibit. And I think that helped him to win. Now,
yeah,
I think the world is his right now. If he can continue with that attitude, because his golf game is never in question. I was really impressed with that performance last week.
Yeah, and you look at the guys around him, Peter, he's moved to number 1 now. Dustin now number 2, JT 3, Morikawa 4. You look at the guys that are around him, all these guys we know can hit it. They've got length. They're good approach game players. But Jon Rahm is, I think, in my estimation, is by far the most consistent putter of all of them. I mean, there's some separation there when it comes to the flag stick with Rahm. And right now, that's the difference to me. He is the most complete player up there because of the flat stick and the consistency of that. Xander at 5 probably could arguably be right there with him. He tends to not have those up and downs with the flat stick, but there's a little runway here for Rahm now. Don't you think that he could perhaps create a little separation if he can just keep this play going, as we saw with DJ, because of the way that he can putt the golf ball?
I agree with you, but I'm going to take you back to when Jordan Spieth won 3 quick majors in his career. And we were all saying that this is the new Tiger. This guy's the next great player. But he's stuck on 3 majors. Why? In my estimation, expectations. When you start expecting yourself to do something, drive it in the fairway, hit it on the green, make a 4-footer, win a tournament, that can tend to get in your head. The worst thing we can do as golfers or as athletes, performers, is to judge. You can't judge your performance. You let everybody else, you let guys like us do that. But what you have to do is you have to evaluate your performance. You look at your driving, you look at your iron play, you look at your pitch game, your wedge game, your bunker game, your putting game. And I think if you can be honest with that, I think you can peak perform over a long time. Jack Nicklaus, Faldo did it for a long time. Norman did it. Tiger. Those are the guys that I think honestly evaluate their game. When you talk about where Jon Rahm is, he is right at the doorstep of being a dominant player. But we've said that before about other players. Remember when Hal Sutton was the next Nicklaus? He was the guy that was going to dominate. So I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to reserve judgment to see how John does in the next 2, next 4, next 5 years. Let's see if he adds to this U.S. Open championship. And I don't care if it's more majors or more tournaments. I want to see him start to dominate 2 to 3 wins a year, kind of like we've seen from DJ. We saw it from Tiger. We saw it from Jack. And then let's set our clocks, and we'll do this again in 5 years if all three of us are still in the same positions to where we can let us judge. But I want all the players to evaluate their game. Travis, you know that. You're a world-class coach and a teacher. You evaluate your students' games. You don't just judge, oh, that was terrible, that was good, that was terrible. You have to evaluate each performance and break it down.
Peter, we have to be very, very careful whenever we give Travis compliments on this show. We don't normally like to do it. So if you could not do that again.
Okay. Oh, that just popped in. I see that. See that text from you. Don't compliment Travis. Got it. Okay.
All right. Well, you mentioned the name Jordan Spieth, and that's a great name to spin it forward to this week. Because I was there a few years ago when, in my opinion, it was the greatest finish in Travelers history for sure. But I think it's one of the greatest finishes in golf history when he holed out from the bunker in sudden death over Daniel Berger. It was amazing. But you've won this event 2 times. You may have looked a little different between the first and the second time that you won it in the 80s and in the 03 year. But this week, and historically, they get such a great field. But it's a week after a major. Those two things don't match up. Why does this course and this tournament get such a great field?
The community. The one thing that I always felt when I first started in 1977, which is just a few years ago, the community support at Hartford for the Travelers is off the charts. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and to me, my wife and I always talked about Hartford being as close to Portland in terms of the atmosphere and the community feel from all the residents. Hartford and Portland were about as close as you could get. Now, Portland has deteriorated a little bit lately in the political spectrum. Well, we can get into that maybe another time. But still, to this day, the support that we feel at the Travelers is incredible. The players feel like they live there. Everybody you see, everybody you talk to, they welcome you. When you're out to dinner, when you're sending a package, FedEx or UPS, and they know that you come up in a courtesy car that says Travelers, you feel welcome. You feel a part of the community. And I don't think there's a better community on tour today, to this day. And that would span a long time for me back in when I first won there. To this day now, that embraces the players and the tournaments like that Hartford Travelers group. So I think that more than anything, I remember feeling a part of the community.
Talk about the golf course, Peter. TPC River Highlands. It's, by the way, 1977. That was the year I was born. Anyway.
Great. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Wow.
I'm no longer saying that.
See,
You're
Peter,
done,
this
Travis.
Is what he does. This is what he does.
The course, like Torrey Pines last week, 7,600, big ballpark. This week, it's just under 6,900. It's not a long golf course. Guys are going to hit more fairways and greens, of course, than we saw last year. But any kind of style really can win here. Bubba's won 3 times. DJ won here. But then you go to the other side. Ches Reavie won here 2 years ago. Kenny Duke has won here. So you don't have to overpower the golf course. The course kind of lends itself to different kinds of play. Speak to TPC River Highlands a little bit and what we're expecting here this week.
Well, Travis, I believe the golf's going in the wrong direction with longer and longer golf courses. I wish the powers that be in the game would remember that length is a part of the game, but so is accuracy. And I think that's why the TPC River Highlands has always remained a player favorite, because it doesn't favor one type of player. You mentioned Bubba Watson's won there 3 times. Bubba loves to be able to see big, high curves and cuts. He's probably the greatest artist we have on the PGA Tour, because he never sees in straight lines. He sees in big, left to right, right to left, low, high. But then you look at a Ches Reavie, who is a very solid ball striker, but Ches plays pretty much a straight ball. And when you look at those 2 players, you can have flamboyant winners, ball strikers like Bubba, or very steady players, ball strikers like me. I was always a very steady, reliable ball striker, good driver, good iron player, never really too flashy a player. My mouth would get me in trouble a lot more than my driver would. But that to me, I love that. I love that type of aspect about a golf course. So what concerns me as a player moving forward in the game of golf with the 4 majors is that length is becoming the dominant factor. That's why I really love the Open Championship still. It's played on this rotation of the same golf courses. When I started playing in the Open way back, when you weren't even born yet, Travis, we played Royal St. George's, we played St. Andrews, we played Birkdale, and we still play them to this day. There are no tricks. They don't have to really prepare the golf course. You don't have to cut the greens to be much faster. You don't have to grow much rough, because there is no rough when you're playing link style, seaside type golf. So I worry about the game of golf demanding everybody hit 340, 350, 360 off the tee. I don't know how many people can do that in the real world, but I think that's what the players like about TPC River Highlands. It doesn't put the demand on the length. It puts the demand on being able to strategize your way around the golf course and hit different type shots.
Speaking of different types of shots, and I want to close this part of the interview. We got 2 questions, and Trav is going to get into the whole Brooks Bryson thing. But when you talk about Bryson DeChambeau, he loves the entertainment side of it. That's where I come from. I feel like, for me personally, what I bring to the golf world is from the entertainment side. You're the exact same way. You've always been kind of an outlier because of how much you like to entertain, in addition to playing high-level golf. If you could get some of these, not just the young kids that look like robots when they play, but even some of the veterans who I always use on this show, Patrick Cantlay as my example of, you make a birdie putt, thank you. But then you've got players that complain because they don't have the endorsement dollars that some of the other players have. How important today, 2021, is the entertainment side of golf as well?
I think the entertainment aspect of the game is huge. It just as you said, but I was lucky when I first came out. I got thrown into the mix with people like Arnold Palmer and Lee Trevino and Chichi Rodriguez. So I got to witness firsthand the players that when the ball went in the hole, they reacted. They were bigger than life, and they really wanted to bring people into the ropes. My good pal, the late great Payne Stewart, he would do the same thing. But we learned at the feet of Arnold Palmer. Arnold always told us, look, you've got to reach out behind the ropes and bring people into the ropes, not physically, but spiritually and psychologically. Sorry, I got things kicking in here. I wanted to be able to have people feel they were a part of the round and part of my world. Again, I used to do a lot of outings with Arnold Palmer and Lee Trevino, and they used to say, let's go over there and talk to these people to the left of 1, to the right of 2, over the green on 3. In between shots, it doesn't take much just to say hello to somebody. You may walk over there and see somebody who's got a shirt on with an Augusta logo and just start a conversation. Did you play Augusta or did you just buy the shirt? Did you, if you played Augusta, well, what'd you shoot? What did you think of 12? Where'd you hit it on 12? Because that 30-second exchange is going to last a career for you and a lifetime for that person. But that's the magic of Jack, of Arnold, of Gary Player, Trevino, Chi-Chi, Fuzzy. I think that was more a part of the tour back then than it is today. Again, I don't mean to be negative here, but what concerns me too are the agents. We've got a lot of agents on tour that tell the player, don't look at anybody but your caddy and look at that club and I want you to win. You don't need to deal with all these other people. And I think, well, all you have to do is look at the NBA. That's the same thing. The NBA, when you start taking yourself too seriously, that's the beginning of the end.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, we don't take ourselves very seriously here on this show. I can promise you that. I got to ask you, I mean, you got this whole Brooks and Bryson feud going on, and there's a line, I think, in everything, right? In entertainment. And I do think they're playing into it a little bit. But I mean, I'm just curious, Peter, coming from you, how have you seen it? And is this a good thing for the game? I mean, obviously a rivalry we know is a good thing, and having that and guys going back and forth, but have they gone too far? Do you feel like, with Brooksy being called out and then him rewarding those people for being kicked out with a case of beer, and what's transpired? Give me your thoughts.
Oh, I think it's extremely unprofessional, first of all. If Arnold were still alive, I know that Arnold would pull those two guys aside, probably sit them down, grab them, and put a finger in their face, kind of like they used to do. Bob Golby, Dan Sykes, I know I'm going way back, Arnold, Trevino, they would say, look, stop that. This is not good for our game. This is not good for our organization, the PGA Tour. Again, a lot of these players live in their own bubble. Interesting to see all these players now have their own logos. These players aren't good enough and big enough or successful enough to have their own logos.
I say the same thing.
The one thing that now Arnold had a logo because he was Arnold Palmer. Greg Norman's got the best logo in sports, the shark, the colorful shark, because he's Greg Norman. Jack Nicklaus, the bear. Unless you've won a lot of tournaments, you don't need your own logo. If you want to create a logo and put it in the back of your hat, that's fine. But that's the beginning of, hey, look at me. I'm really important. And that's the one thing about the Brooks Bryson thing. I think it's silly. I think it's childish. I don't think it's that good, but I'm not gonna sit either of those guys down because they know better. They know it's distracting. It's distracting to their game. Bryson and Brooks are both world-class players, great players, and both great guys. Travis, you know them. Mm-hmm. Jonathan, I don't know if you know them, but they're great people. And again, I think it's a distraction. I don't know if it's a distraction from the pressure for them, but I think pretty soon when it starts to integrate itself into your daily routine, like, hey, Brooksy, Bryce, all that kind of stuff, I think, okay, that's it. We're done. We're moving on. They're going to be on the Ryder Cup team together this fall. And again, I know Stricker. I talked to Stricker, and he doesn't like it. He's the captain of the Ryder Cup team for the United States. He's not happy with it because it's one of those things that as a captain and as a player on the Ryder Cup team, I've been on 2 Ryder Cup teams. You don't want anything in the way. You want to be able to focus on your golf and beating your opponent, period. That's it. And I hope that come this fall, come September, that's what Brooks and Bryson and everybody on the team is going to be focusing on.
Especially the way the United States has really struggled in the Ryder Cup the last several years, and specifically 2 years ago as well. So certainly they need to get on the same page. So many great insights from the 2-time Travelers champion, Peter Jacobsen, this week here on Cash Out with the Coaches. Let's continue on now. And Peter, this at the end of the day is a golf betting show. And we feel like the fastest way to get more viewers, to really grow the game other than grassroots, is through golf betting. Because if you bet on something, you're obviously going to watch it. How do you feel the explosion of sports betting and golf betting has affected the game?
I like it. I don't think that's a problem, except when the fans start to get in the mix. One of the things you can't do in golf because of the professionalism of the game, the historical professionalism, if you've got a bet on Bryson and Brooks or Rory has a chance to beat him, and all of a sudden you're on site and you scream and you mess them up, that's when it starts to go too far. But right now, I think we're at the initial stages. So far, it's harmless. I think it's good. It's interesting, and it's interactive. So, again, we just have to make sure we don't go too far with fan interaction with the players, because, as you know, the only thing that keeps a fan from a player is that thin little yellow gallery rope, at least in the NBA or on the pitch in NHL or World Cup. You're in the stands. Same with an NFL game. You can't get out onto the golf course, can't get onto the field. But in golf, you're right there. Mm-hmm. A player misses a fairway to the right, you see everybody gather around there, and up comes Phil or Bryson or Rory, and you're 3 feet from them. And that's the one thing that's really cool about playing professional golf, but also the scary thing when you start looking at the interactive betting. So I think it's something kind of a wait and see.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you think about it, there's just that little thin rope, right? It's
intimidating. It's intimidating, that yellow nylon rope.
Were you, Peter, I got to know, I had Lanny Watkins on the podcast a couple months ago here at SportsPub, and he was telling, and Lanny, of course, he liked the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday games, and he would organize them, and he told lots of great stories. And Arnold, who was a very good friend of yours, he liked to play, right, in those gambling games as well. How about you, Peter? Were you involved in those games at all? Were the side bets early, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Did you follow Arnie to any of those games?
I never played with Arnold or Lanny. Lanny was probably the most prolific gambling player and trash talker in PGA Tour history. They'd love to play for 20, 30, 40, sometimes 100, who knows, maybe more on the Mondays and Tuesdays. I didn't have that kind of money, so I didn't want to go out there and try to play for it because I wasn't very good. I'd probably lose, so I'd end up, instead of taking an airplane home, I'd be walking home. But I know that Phil Mickelson, to talk about the guys today, Phil Mickelson loves to have anything on the line because he says it keeps him sharp. Me, I wanted to go out and practice. Travis, if I was out working with you, I played a lot of rounds. Fluff caddy for me my first 20 years on tour. And I worked with Jim Hardy, and Jim would come out and we'd go out and we would create a strategy on the golf course that I would employ during the tournament. And I try to stick to those strategies on the course, and Fluff would write it down. So I was a little more strategic in my approach, probably because I wasn't as good as Lanny and Arnold and Phil. They could just freewheel and try to compete and push themselves. But, oh, yeah, there are tons of gambling stories where guys would come to the last hole and they're $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on the line. And this is back in the day when $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 was a ton of cash.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Lanny, put it this way, you wanted Lanny on your team. Lanny was my Ryder Cup captain in 95. He was my teammate in 85. I want Lanny on my side in anything, in any fight, any argument. He's my guy, period.
Yeah.
Lee Trevino famously, and we're talking to Peter Jacobsen, incredible golf personality and player from all these years. Lee Trevino has a famous quote where he says, "You don't know pressure until you're gambling with money on the golf course that you know you don't have to pay." Give us a gambling story, and it could be from anybody, that's just entertaining, that kind of tells what the players were like back then when the cameras weren't around.
Well, I remember one time I was playing at Doral, it was my rookie year, and a player came in on 18 at the Blue Monster, and he hit a drive in the water, and he hit his second shot. He dropped it. Third shot short of the green, rolled back into the water, dropped it, chunked his chip, rolled back into the water, and he made like a 9 on the last hole, par 4. And he came into the locker room and he was complaining and moaning and groaning and throwing things and telling everybody about his 9 and, oh, my poor me, I just can't believe it. And Trevino stopped him and said, look, 90% of the guys in this locker room don't care you made a 9 on the last hole, and the other 10% wish it had been a 10. So that's the one thing about gambling that you just can't. You've got to live in your own world when you're playing the PGA Tour. It's you and your caddy. And when that happens, I'll tell you one funny story about Mickelson and I. We played a 9-hole match in a practice round at the Bob Hope Desert Classic back in the day, American Express now. And we played 9, and Phil said, let's play $100 a hole. I said, I don't play for that kind of money. He goes, all you can lose is 900. I'm like, oh, in the crowd. He had 500 people, and I had Fluff and me. That was my gallery. So he birdies 1, eagles 2, birdies 3, and birdies 4. I'm 4 down. And I turned to Fluff. I go, how much money do you have in your pocket? And he had like $28, and I had 100. So I'm like, because Phil wants it paid right now. Right now.
Right.
Before you leave the green. Yeah, you probably heard that. So yeah. I'm terrified. I'm going to lose $900. He hits it in the water at 5. I win the hole. 6-hole par 5. I make birdie. I'm 2 down. I make a long putt at 7. I'm 1 down. 8. We both hit it close. He misses. We're even. We go to the last hole. So at least I know if I lose that, I could at least cover the 100. We get over in the 9th hole. Phil goes, let's play for it all. I said, what? What? He said, okay, 500. And I'm like, what? And the crowds go, so I said, okay. Foolishly, I said, okay. So I hit my patented neck tee shot into the right rough. He hits a Mickelson bomb down there. I've got 8 iron, hit it on the green. He hits it up there 6 feet from the hole, gap wedge. I'm dead. I got to come up with 500 quick. I putt, make par. He misses his putt and trickles it by, and it starts kind of trickling like this, and it goes about 3 or 4 feet by, and he actually stands there, and he shadow boxes, and he looks back at me, and I just kind of go like this.
You weren't giving it at all.
He looks at me and goes, wow, it sure got quiet in here. And I said, dude, this is your nightmare. This is your game. I'm just a spectator. So I made him putt it, and he made it. And we tied. I got out of there before he wanted to bet $1,000 on whose car comes first at valet. So, but Mickelson is the guy to this day who loves to have some action, but there's nobody today in the game that I want to watch more than Phil Mickelson. Kind of like Tiger in the day.
Yeah.
You can't take your eyes off Mickelson at any time because he's going to hit a spectacular shot no matter where he is. I made the comment on the broadcast Sunday morning last week. Phil hit it to a bunker on 1, he hit it to a bunker on 2, and he had impossible shots, and he hit great shots. And I said, wouldn't that be a really fun made-for-TV event to take Phil Mickelson and put him in the most impossible shots you can find? And then I said, well, wait a minute. Oh, he does that on a daily basis. So that would be a bad idea.
Why do I feel like Xander is in the mix with Phil in this gambling a little bit too? I feel like he's not afraid to get in there and mix it, is he, with Phil? Xander Schauffele.
No, yeah, he's kind of a quiet assassin. He's pretty quiet, but he's intense. And is there anybody, Travis, looking at the game of golf, the way that you swing it and putt it and move around, is there anybody more impressive than Schauffele?
Yeah.
Every time I see him play, I think, well, he's going to win because he's so good. I think the future is incredibly bright for Schauffele because he doesn't really do anything that would have you question his game. Chipping, putting, driving, nothing quirky in his swing. I think the guy's working on a Hall of Fame career. He's gonna win a lot.
Yep.
I don't remember who said it on the broadcast on Sunday. It might have been you, Peter, but somebody was talking about when Xander was getting ready to hit. They said, "Oh, Xander during the pandemic played a ton of rounds with Phil Mickelson, and Mickelson said every time they played together, he shot 63 or better and pounded him." And I have a very, very close friend who is very close to Phil, and has told me that his normal normal game is 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, and that you have to have that 6,000 on you, but any presses you can play later because he loves to press, just like what you just said, Peter. Like, I was playing for it all. So you got to have the $6,000, but then anything else you can pay later. Now, speaking of playing later, at Phoenix, they're going to build a kiosk that in the next couple of years you can bet when you walk in the gate and then collect on your way out to your car. That's the next evolution that I think is going to happen at every PGA Tour stop. What do you make of that, Peter?
Wow, that's interesting. That's the first I've heard of that. Again, I would reserve judgment because if somebody bets $1,000 on Mickelson, whatever he does, and the fan can get involved in that shot, that's what scares me. Yeah. That's what scares me. If Mickelson's got a one-shot lead going into 18, and I've bet Xander Schauffele, and it's a tough shot, and I go, he don't hit in the water, that would be concerning to me. One more Mickelson story. We were playing a practice round tour championship at Southern Hills in Tulsa, and it's just Phil and I. Bones is caddying for him and Fluff's with me, and we're on the 8th hole, par 3, big green, and the pin that day in the practice round is cut on the front right, and we're practicing on the back left, the whole location back left. So we've got this 95-footer that breaks. It breaks 20 feet down to the right. So Phil goes, and it's on our way to the 9th tee. He goes, $100 make right here. Well, there's no way anybody makes this, bud. You can barely keep it on the green. I go, okay. And he goes, you go first. Age before beauty. Okay, doesn't matter. No one's going to make it. I putt it. It goes up and it goes down and it misses the hole. He putts. And damn if the thing doesn't go up and go in. Yeah. But that's Phil. He is the king of the unexpected. So before we get to the 9th tee, he goes, you got my 100? I got to go into my money clip and peel 20, 40, 60. I had to pay him before we hit our tee shot on 9.
Oh, jeez.
Incredible. That is incredible.
It's amazing.
I love it, though. He's an assassin. He's a killer.
He is.
He's a gambling killer. He absolutely is.
As I said, I think after the win, we always talk about the top 10 players in the game of all time. You got Jack, you got Tiger, then you got Trevino, and you got Hogan, and you got Nelson, you got Player, and blah, 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 blah. There are a lot of contenders. I think with that win at 50 years old at the PGA, I think Phil is easily top 10, and he might be top 5. The longevity, obviously, when you look at wins, major wins, you look at impact on the game. Again, they say Hall of Fame. Is there anybody more famous than Phil Mickelson? They should call that the Hall of Accomplishment, because you've got some players in there that won a lot, but does anybody know him? No. But Phil right now is the Pied Piper, probably picking up where Arnold left off. In everybody's eyes are on Phil every moment he's out of the locker room on the golf course. And to me, that makes him extremely special on and off the course.
In the Tiger era, too.
Yep. Think about this. Sorry, and I'm talking way too much on your show.
No, you're not.
You think about what Tiger did with Phil. How many tournaments more would Phil have won had he not played in the Tiger era?
Yep.
Now, I do think that Tiger made Phil better, and I think Phil made Tiger better. That's the one thing you've always got, like Hogan and Nelson. They bring each other along. But it's an honor for me to have played with Jack and Arnold, and now Tiger and Phil, because it's I love golf. I love golf. Yeah. I'm not that good. I'm not the best. I'm not the worst. But to be able to see the best and to be able to compete with them, man, that is something that I cherish till the day I die.
If I'm Paul Azinger, by the way, or Nick Faldo, they better hope that Phil keeps these competitive juices going, because he was so good at the PGA Championship on commentary that he will break the bank as soon as he decides he wants to do that. And you're in the game. you at the highest level. My dream is to be on Nance's crew since I'm at CBS Sports. How good do you think Phil could be as like a main golf analyst?
Well, there's 4 guys right now that if I were at NBC, CBS, whomever is going to start doing this, number 1, Tiger Woods. I know Tiger's coming through the rehab with his leg. NBC wanted him at the Open this year, and he turned that down. I'm sorry, because Tiger Woods would be he's incredibly insightful. He's funny. You don't really see that when he plays, but he's got a smile that brightens the room. You know that. Phil Mickelson, it would be amazing. I don't know who's going to win the Phil Mickelson sweepstakes, but somebody will when Phil decides to stop playing. Another guy who is really good and insightful is Jim Furyk. You guys probably don't know Jim as that type of guy. He's funny, really smart, insightful. And then Graham McDowell. You know, Graham McDowell, the Irishman, the Northern Irishman, he is so funny, so insightful, and fun to be around. So in the next generation of broadcasters, Tiger, Phil, Jim Furyk, and G-Mac, look for them when they stop playing to be in the booth there. And I look forward to hearing them when I'm sitting in my camp chair at 106 years old.
Yeah, it's
hey,
that
Coach,
magic.
Coach, you better hope that Cantlay doesn't shut it down anytime soon, because he'll be sitting in your chair.
I am not worried that Patrick Cantlay is going to take any job that I have. Not worried at all. And he's not worried that I'm going to take his job either. Peter, we could literally do this all day. Amazing. We knew you'd be amazing. And we're not only going to hold you to the 5-year thing that you said. We want you to come on way sooner than that again. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Thanks, Peter.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Hey, guys, anytime. Travis, you have my number. Give me a call. I love to. I'm sorry, I talk way too much.
No.
I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. I didn't get the COVID. I got the vaccination with a phonograph needle. But I love doing this. I love your show, guys. Thanks again for having me on.